Anyone who has lost a loved one can relate to this next topic, and this has to do with proper etiquette. Now, I understand if you've lost a loved one that your friends, when they talk to you at first, they don't know what to say. They feel awkward. And I get it, and there's no, I guess, really right or wrong way of approaching this. But speaking as someone who has lost a loved one, there are some things that I was told by people close to me, by friends, that drove me crazy. The first one was, well, he's in a better place. I heard that from a few people. He's in a better place. I have grown to hate that. And the reason is, these people that said that to me, they were not privy to the conversations that I had with my father before he passed. Had they been, they would have understood that my dad told me on more than one occasion, I wish I could live for 20 more years. And so whenever I would be told, he's in a better place, the answer is no. The better place for him is here, because he told me this is where he wanted to be. So that's one. Another thing that I hate is when people say, oh, you were close, this must be hard for you. You think? It's like I didn't know that I was close to this person, and I didn't realize it was hard for me, but thank you very much for informing me of that. What it really comes down to, and this is advice for life, not just for this situation, but what it comes down to is just use your brain and think before you speak. If you do that, it'll make things much easier for everybody. So etiquette is the first thing. Second thing I want to talk about is selfishness when it comes to the loss of a friend or family member. My dad was always a very jovial guy. He was always a big talker, and he was a big joker and a very social guy, and everybody knew him. In the last days of his life, when we had to put him into a senior's home, so that he could get around-the-clock care, his demeanor changed. He became mostly emotionless, didn't speak, certainly didn't joke around. If you talk to him, he wouldn't really react, might nod his head or say a few words, not much. And I can understand why, because I'm sure he was depressed, because he understood his fate. I'm sure that he was probably scared. And so, that was what his demeanor became in his last days. There was one day when I was sitting with him in his room, and I had noticed on my way in that day, I had happened to glance at the visitation book at the front desk, and I noticed that he was getting a lot of visitors, which was really good. So I'm sitting with him in his room, and I said to him, I hear you've had a lot of visitors. And Dad mentioned one particular friend of his, one of his close friends. And he said to me, how many times do you think he's been here? And I said, I don't know, how many times? Dad held up his fingers like this. 0. He'd been there 0 times. And obviously it was upsetting to him, or he wouldn't have mentioned it. After he passed, we had the celebration of life ceremony for him. And I sought out that friend. And when I saw him, I asked him straight up, why didn't you come to visit Dad in the senior's home? He asked about you. Why didn't you come? And the response I was given was, I wanted to remember him the way he was. Similar situation with my sister. When her health started to decline. And I was told that certain friends and family members hadn't been around to visit her. And then with at least one of them, the answer was, I want to remember her for how she was. And I heard that and I thought to myself, you're just being selfish, because it shouldn't matter what you want. This person who is, not in a good way health-wise, they just want to see their friend. And so it shouldn't matter to you what you want. It shouldn't matter to you what they look like. They just want to see their friend. A similar situation when it comes to selfishness is something that I had to learn for myself. My sister's health got to the point where we had to look into palliative care for her, because my brother-in-law, he was doing everything he could, but he couldn't do everything, and he wasn't sleeping, watching her all night. And so we looked into palliative. Well, this was right in the midst of COVID-19. And so when we spoke to the palliative care place, they basically told us that due to the COVID rules, there would only be one visitor allowed a day. And they told us that, okay, in my sister's case, maybe they could deem her to be end of life. That's the term they used. And that if she is considered to be end of life, then we can get you 2 visitors a day. We actually sat on that decision for a few hours before, making the call to put her into palliative, because we kept thinking about the fact that she could only have up to 2 visitors a day, and that there was at least 3 of us that wanted to be with her. And so, we really, thought about that decision and thought about maybe we can get home care and keep her at home and everything. And finally, we realized that palliative care was what she needed. And it turned out to be a good call because of the care that she got there. But the fact that we sat on that decision just because of what we wanted, for a few hours, that was selfishness on my part and on the part of the others that were weighing that decision for a little while. And that's something that I learned, And I guess my message here is, don't put your own needs first. Put the needs of the person who is sick or who is old, put their needs first.